And good afternoon. Friday is here again, and today we're going to be talking about relationships and how relationships can contribute to your health. Now, we all know that we live in this little sappy bubble, especially if you are a fan of the Hallmark Channel and that kind of thing. No harm, no foul on that. Occasionally, it's something that is good for our soul, but for me, sitting all day watching the Hallmark Channel just doesn't do me any good. Okay, the storylines are pretty much the same. Love is perfect. The chemistry is always there. Romantic love lasts forever. And against all odds, you make it through. So, I don't mind the occasional Hallmark movie, but that is just not how it is in real life. And so if you've been married for any length of time, if you've been in a relationship for any length of time, you know that is not true. And we're bringing research to you to show how this factors in your overall health. So research suggests that deeper factors rather than just chemistry play a crucial role in sustaining long-term partnerships. Studies have found that shared spirituality and a belief that marriage is sacred are linked to higher well-being, better communication, and increased relationship satisfaction. Now, modern relationships take many forms today. Societal norms around dating, intimacy, and commitment have changed over time. Nearly 1/3 of the marriages here in the United States now end in divorce, leaving many to navigate a landscape that feels uncertain. Some celebrate this trend toward non-traditional relationships without long-term intent. Their idea is marriages don't last, so why bother? Let's just enjoy what we have for the moment, okay? They embrace the flexibility that particular mental attitude provides. And yet, research suggests that for many of these experiences are emotionally complex and sometimes lead to distress and unfulfilled expectations. And of course, we know that. Nearly half of U.S. adults think that dating is harder than it used to be, according to a 2020 Pew Research Center report. The rise of situationships, and I've never heard that word before, the rise of situationships, relationships that exist in the gray area between casual and committed, reflects this complexity. In fact, Tinder's 2022 year-end swipe, swipe right, swipe left. I've never done that. I'm just saying I've never done that. But this is their swipe in review, reported a 49% increase in members adding the term to their bio, signaling their preference for ambiguity, situationships. Uncommitted, intimate encounters have largely replaced traditional courtship. Their rise normalized by the influence of popular culture and pornography consumption. Now, a study published in the Review of General Psychology found that 60 to 80% of North American college students have had a casual, intimate encounter, while 70% of romantically involved people aged 12 to 21 reported engaging in intimacy without commitment. Now, that kind of is a shocking statistic. 12? I mean, I don't think I knew what intimacy was when I was 12. And so, people are getting more information at a much younger age. But the study, they studied people in intimate situations, 12 to 21, right? Yet, beneath these trends lingers an undercurrent of longing. The same survey found that 65% of women and 45% of men secretly hoped that their casual encounters would develop into something deeper and more lasting. And this is where spirituality enters the picture, offering something countercultural, a stable, solid foundation for meaning, trust, and long-term fulfillment. So I have been married twice, 2 times. I was married once when I was 23. And that marriage lasted for almost 21 years. And my late husband, he passed away in 1999. And it was devastating. It was absolutely devastating. I was not his first wife. And when we got married, I'm a very spiritual person, very much dedicated Christian person. And I told him I do not believe in divorce. And so you better think long and hard because, divorce is just not going to be an option. And he was a good Catholic guy. He didn't believe in divorce either. And so, the marriage lasted until, till death do us part. And so some years after that, and I do agree that dating is harder than it used to be. And I was very frustrated as a young woman who was a widow. I had teenage kids at home. And it was like, where do you meet eligible men? Obviously not right after he died, but after some years had passed. And so, that's one of those things. It's just hard to meet the right kind of person. But you have to have standards. And I remember when I met my current husband, and I was not his first wife, I had the same conversation of, I believe that marriage is till death you part and divorce is not an option. So you better make sure that this is what you want to get into, because I do believe that marriage is very, very sacred. And that's what this report says, that when you have that, that knowing, that mindset that marriage is very, very sacred, you tend to have a much stronger and a much longer lasting bond. It encourages meaning, trust, and long-term fulfillment. So spiritual love is a transcendent, unconditional, and selfless form of love. It is believed to flow from the divine to humanity and vice versa. It has long captivated the human psyche. It is characterized by qualities such as infinite compassion, harmony, unwavering commitment to the well-being of others, and it's not a rare occurrence. According to a 2025, so this is really, really recent, this is May and 2025, right? A recent 2025 Pew Research Center report says that 40% of Americans feel a deep sense of spiritual peace at least once per week. David Dolehite, professor of family life at Brigham Young University with a doctorate in family studies from the University of Minnesota, says that his research indicates that those who believe in love, who commune with and serve God, often have an array of healing spiritual experiences that range from small moments to remarkable ones, wherein they feel God's love, grace, forgiveness, and guidance. Now, this professor shares a transformation story of one man whose behavior was causing harm to his family. One night, while involved in drugs and alcohol, he heard a voice urging him to leave the situation 3 times. As he decided as an act of his will to acknowledge God's guidance and take action, things fell into place and his marriage began to heal. Dolehite encourages young people to develop their spirituality before finding a life partner by cultivating a spiritual relationship with God first, one in which you have a sense of positive self-worth and feel centered and at peace, and you feel loved. You are less likely to enter into a relationship from a place of spiritual emptiness, confusion, or need. So I think that's something that is really, really important. How many people are just lonely? How many people, I was lonely when I was a widow. I was very lonely. I had my kids, I had my work, but, I was lonely, and I'm lonely for companionship, all right? And so when you're in those kind of situations, it's easy just to, get that quick fix and that kind of thing. But this is not what is long lasting. And so having that fulfillment of a spiritual relationship, you know that you are loved no matter whether you're with someone or whether you're not with someone. You are loved no matter what the circumstances are. And so when you have that deep-seated peace, that deep-seated feeling of acceptance, then you're going to have better boundaries. You're going to have better, even your affection and attention and concern for the other person. You're going to have a better outcome of that because you yourself are seated in peace. You are centered. And this is what we see a lot of times. We don't see people who are centered. They're chasing this shiny object. They're chasing that shiny object. And they're just all over the place. And we don't want to be there. We don't want to be that. So a sacred marriage is a happy marriage. Dolehite's research found that when couples and families share sacred meaning and believe that their lives mean more than simply inhabiting a physical world, their love and devotion deepens over time, Crystal Hernandez-Kane, who is a licensed psychologist with a doctorate in clinical psychology from Bowling Green State University, is an expert in the relationship between spiritual intimacy and marital intimacy. She says, and I've never heard this word used this way before, right? She says sanctification is designed as the perception that an aspect of life has a divine character and significance. So this is kind of important. So as Christians, as believers, we understand that there is a process of salvation. We all know that. There's also a secondary process, a continuing process of sanctification. And when we use that word, we usually use that as it means set apart. We usually use that word as I am set apart. I'm not going to follow after other gods. I'm not going to follow secular culture. I'm set apart to do the work of God, right? So she's using this word sanctification in that the marriage relationship is set apart. And it is something that the two people come together with God there, and it is a totally different perspective than what most people have about marriage. She says, if a couple wants to integrate spirituality in their marriage, they may consider a range of activities, including studying sacred texts, engaging in prayer, and attending religious services together. And this is really what I have found in my own marriages, is that we do attend church together. We do study the Bible together and other sacred texts as well. And so these are some things that deepen your relationship, because, the Bible, people that talk about the Bible, they say it is living, it is new, all those kind of things, right? And when you're studying it and you get some kind of a revelation and your partner gets some kind of a revelation, when you share that revelation in the intimacy of that marriage, then that strengthens the bond that holds you together, and it also strengthens that sanctification part between the humans and the divine, which I thought that was really, really interesting. When a person holds a relationship that's sanctified, they generally, more than likely, want to protect, preserve that relationship, to invest in that relationship, and to devote more time and energy to nurturing that relationship. This is what Hernandez-Kane says. So the sanctification leads to better communication, relationship satisfaction, forgiveness, overall commitment, and problem solving when faced with conflict. So we see a lot in these days. I mean, when I was little, I remember my grandparents when they had their 50th year anniversary, and I thought, gee, that's going to be great. I can't wait till that happens for me. That was one of my goals. And I mean, sadly, you heard the story, widowed after almost 21 years. And here we are, I've got 22 years currently. Altogether, at some point, I'm probably going to make 50 years. But being married to the same person for a long period of time is something really, really to be applauded. And we know that most people want to give it up. Most people want to call it quits. Most people, when things get too hard, they just, trade the spouse in for a new one. That is not what we want to do. And that is not something that people who have the spiritual aspect in their marriage tends to want to do. And so maybe because we don't necessarily have a lot of spirituality in our culture today, maybe that's why our marriages are failing. Evidence shows, says Hernandez-Kane, when she studied newlyweds, she found that relationships sanctified early in the marriage led to greater marital satisfaction and intimacy at only 1 year later. The benefits go beyond the psychological well-being, with other research showing that happy marriages lead to lower mortality rates and increased longevity. That means you're not going to die young, and you're going to live to a really, really ripe age because you're so satisfied in that relationship. And so this is something that I'm not saying this. This is what the research is saying. The American Families and Faith Project, a national research project co-directed by Dolahite, conducted in-depth interviews with more than 300 married couples from 33 states and found that about 20% of those interviewed had been married before. Many shared that their first marriage lacked a religious foundation, focusing more on physical attraction and romance. These things eventually faded, leading to unresolved conflicts and grief. Now, I'm going to tell you, when I was younger and I was in college for the first time, and yes, I've been in college for a long time, multiple colleges, multiple degrees, and so I'm very thankful the Lord has let me do that. But when I first went into college, I wanted to be a marriage counselor. That's what I wanted to do. And I have done some through ministerial work and that kind of thing, but one of the things that I learned in school is that sexual attraction and romance only last about 18 months. And so if you get married just based on the chemistry, that chemistry invariably fails at around 18 months. Now, it might be 17, it might be 20, but around that little ballpark, that's going to fade. So you've got to have something a little bit more significant to that. And I can tell you, as a longtime married person, that does happen. You've got these periods of months where everything is hot and heavy, and then you've got a season where it's not, and then it comes back hot and heavy, and then you've got a season where it's not. And that's just part of the cycle of a marriage. And so that is borne out through the research that shows that people who get married just on physical attractiveness alone have a really, really hard time making it through the 2-year anniversary. And so that's just sad, but it's a fact, and it's a fact borne out by the research. Before their second marriage, the people chose to deepen their own faith first before marrying someone with a similar commitment to spiritual growth. These couples remarked on the differences it made to have a spiritual element in their second marriage. Dolehite and Hernandez-Kane's insight are reflected in Luis Nove's spiritual transformation and second marriage. Now, they don't give a whole lot of information about this person other than he's born in Brazil, about 43 years old. He now works in business and finance management in New York City. All right. He said that from the age of 18 to 22, he was consumed by lust, which led him into a deep depression. He said, I cried out to God many times and I desperately searched for a way out. After much pain and suffering, he took up a spiritual practice in 2006. He said that relationship was based on lust, referring to his first marriage, which ended in divorce, despite efforts to elevate it to the level of sanctification. So what are we hearing here? That if you start out with primarily chemistry, it's hard to change tracks, okay? And so what they're saying in these reports is you want to have that spiritual component. That chemistry will come, and then as that chemistry ebbs and flows, then you're going to have that stability of that spirituality to make it through the long haul. Novus thought that if he was ever going to marry again, that he would want his wife to share the same spiritual beliefs and practices. He said that his second wife has been such a blessing because from the first, their marriage was based on a spiritual mutual growth. And so this is really, really important. He says that transformation of their characters came through deep spiritual refinement. Now, I just want to kind of make a little joke here because it's funny, not funny. But when you're dating somebody and they have these little quirks, right? And you think, oh, that's so cute. And then after you marry them and you're living with those quirks day in and day out, they become not so cute, right? And so that's what he's saying here is that the transformation, and we all need to transform, all of us, that transformation is guided by spiritual practices so that those things that get on the other person's nerves are, dealt with, modified, changed, whatever needs to happen. And that happens through spiritual practices. This is why faith in the divine is a crucial process of overcoming lust, he says. He suggests that people pray often, practice self-reflection, and engage in spirituality. Now, I'll just tell you, too, that self-reflection is a much, much needed mindset, because a lot of times we think we know who we are, and our partner will say, oh, well, why did you do that? Or what was your thought process when you did that? And you're going like, what? So you need to have that self-reflection so you can see just what impact your actions or your thoughts or your words may have had on that other person, because a lot of times we don't do self-reflection. And self-reflection is really, really important for growth. Self-reflection is really, really important for a positive mindset. I mean, life is not always a bowl of cherries. Sometimes there's just pits. You got pits everywhere. And so if you don't have that spiritual stability, if you don't have that emotional stability, then you're going to have some trouble. And so self-reflection is something that needs to happen. Dolehite noted that religious couples have additional sets of resources, shared sanctifications, and meanings that make a notable difference when times get tough. In a 2023 study published in Marriage and Family Review, found that families who increased or maintained their spiritual practices during the COVID-19 pandemic reported higher family closeness and perceived the pandemic as having positive long-term effects on their relationships. Now, I know that wasn't everybody's experience. I know that a lot of people broke up during COVID. I know that our personal church closed down for a long time with COVID, and so we had to seek other avenues for spiritual fulfillment. Thank God for YouTube and all of the things that we could get there, because it was just, a big part of our life is our religious practices. And so when COVID shut down, you couldn't attend church because churches was told to close. That really impacted a lot of people in a negative way. These findings suggest that therapists and counselors may benefit from integrating spiritual practices into relationship guidance, particularly for couples aspiring for deeper emotional intimacy. Additionally, the study aligns with the broader concept of post-traumatic growth, illustrating how adversity, when met with spiritual engagement, can cultivate positive transformations in the relationship. Now, I will just tell you, we see a lot of people, and there's a young lady that I am acquainted with, and I know that she's having marital problems, and I know that she's having counseling, but I also know that the counselor is guiding her into her spirituality. Her parents are guiding her into her spirituality, so she's got that other resource, that sanctification, if you will, that she can draw on as she navigates the quirkiness of marriage, because it's not all that easy. Some days it's easy, but some days it's just not. So viewed from a spiritual perspective, adversity becomes an asset, an opportunity that is rife with growth potential. Nobody really thinks of adversity as a positive thing. Nobody wants to have adversity. I do not pray, dear Lord, give me adversity. I do not, okay? However, we know that our spiritual practices give us the strength to go through adversity, and we know when we get on the other side of adversity, we have been changed, okay? We may have been changed kicking and screaming, but we are changed. Dolehite described the image of a triangle in which a husband and wife are in a horizontal relationship with each other while also in a vertical relationship with God. All right? Noveris similarly emphasizes that true love is built on devotion, trust, valuing virtues, and understanding, which leads to unconditional support and growth. He says, I once thought that love was based on passion, enjoyment, and the fulfillment of desires, but that is exactly what destroyed my previous relationships and the others around me. He says, marriage can be difficult, but when you step back and see how much you have achieved together, then it becomes something truly magical. And I think that everybody that has been married for a long time, right, you can look back over the years, and this year was not so great, but this year was great. This year we, had to deal with this challenge. This year we didn't. And so you've got all those little stepping stones that change you, change your spouse, and it makes you have a stronger, deeper, more cohesive relationship. And so this is what, in our culture, we're not really taught to have a sanctified marriage, right? We're not taught to think of marriage in those terms. I mean, I've been a believer for years and years and years. As I said, married almost 44 years, I never thought about marriage being sanctified. But here, this is another way that we can think of as we grow together, as we go through challenges together, as we do all the things that we do together, we become stronger. The marriage becomes more fulfilling because of that sanctification aspect. So just wanted to throw that out there for you today, that if you want to be healthy, a lot of people think that it's about genetics. Well, my mom had cancer, my dad had diabetes, my grandma had a stroke, or whatever. I'm getting older, I've got that in my genes. And maybe you do. But there's another science that trumps genes, and it's called epigenetics. Epigenetics is what you eat, what you drink, do you smoke, do you have do you use recreational drugs, do you overdrink, all those things, and what about the drama in your life? And so if your marriage is full of drama, then that is not conducive to your health, and that will cause the negative genes to turn on. But if you have that sanctified marriage, right, you're going to eat well, drink well, no drama, no strife. No, I mean, people do get in strife. I'm talking about prolonged strife. That's going to keep those negative genes turned off. And so a healthy, loving relationship is really, really important for your long-term health. All right? I'm just saying, when I was a widow, I still did the right things, right? I still went to church. I still, did all the things I'm supposed to do. But that part of me that needed companionship was lacking, which could have caused stress, which could have caused depression, which could have caused all the things that would lead to those negative genes turning on. So we want to make sure that our relationships are cohesive. We want to make sure that they're healthy. We want to make sure that they're built on the right foundation so that we don't turn on those nasty genes, okay? So that's a lot. A lot is a little bit different vein than what we usually talk about on this podcast. So I hope you enjoyed that. I was very intrigued with what I read. I've been doing a lot of research this week, and I've got some little surprising things to share with you in the weeks to come. And so I hope you enjoy this. It is the weekend. Take advantage of it. Love on your person. Love on yourself. Deepen your own spirituality if you happen to be without a spouse at the moment. And just get yourself ready for the person that God's going to bring into your life. Have a great weekend. Thank you for liking, commenting, sharing, all the things. I appreciate it so much. Take care.